know that this is not
What?
the same franchise, but I
What?
did get this as a wrap gift from my director on this movie.
Oh, is it the movie that you just did that we're going to talk about now?
The movie we're going to talk about. Yes.
He gives those away, huh?
My director was really worried that I would miss him after we wrapped. So he got me this so that I would always have him nearby.
Oh, he's so humble.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's quite the wrap gift. I was
Yeah.
hoping you were going to say, I
Yeah.
just always have this on hand and like pull it out and there we
In
go.
case I need it. No, it was a gift from him. One and
Amazing.
only.
If I didn't already love Michael Shannon, I love him
Yeah.
even more
You're
now.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
sweetheart,
thanks.
Michael Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, I want to jump into this before my time runs out.
I know.
On a more serious note, this is a serious movie and it's an incredible movie. And I want to start, Michael, asking you, it feels like it's about grief, community, lack thereof, religion, violence, obviously. I'm curious for you to speak a little bit about what the movie means to you on those topics and what you're
Yeah,
kind of hoping people take from it on any of those topics, or
right,
if
right,
there's
right.
another one that I didn't mention that you hope that it connects with people on.
Oh, well, I guess primarily what I was thinking when I made this movie is I find this country very confusing. It's a very confusing place to live. You know, it's called the United States of America. So it has the word united in it. So the basic premise seems to be that we're together, all of us. And yet things like this keep happening. And people feel alienated and lonely and powerless and afraid and bullied and disenfranchised. And then they do commit these horrible acts of violence, and then not much changes. And it just keeps happening again and again and again. So um, I was curious to explore why that is. And I felt like, I mean, I have to give a lot of the credit to our writer, Brett Neveu, because I feel like it's a very eloquent exploration on his part. And writing really, I believe, is the most difficult part of the whole enterprise. So I have a huge amount of admiration for him. And Brett is from the Midwest. He's from Iowa originally, and he's using a lot of experiences that he's drawing on a lot of experiences from his own life in his past. He hasn't had a shooter or shooting in his family, but in terms of his experience growing up in the church and growing up in the Midwest, there's something that's very authentic about how he's voicing this, you know, through all these characters.
Yeah,
So
no, it does feel honest. And on that note, I kind of shifting over to Judy, like you have had a long, incredible, and beloved career, but this is a stretch, and you've been often in similar roles in that process. This is a whole new thing. You do it excellently.
Thank
Was
you.
it scary, intimidating, fun? Can you talk about how you stretched for this with Michael and Alexander obviously helping, but also like as a kind of a part B, are you gonna keep doing stuff like are you gonna keep going in new directions? Because it's kind of fun to watch. Like what's coming next?
Well, to answer B first, I mean, the goal is always to keep trying different things and going into, I don't know, trying different roles, telling different stories. So yeah, I hope so. Um, this, I think it, like I guess it is a stretch for me, but I also, I was scared of this story and I was scared of this woman, and yet it all felt so familiar to me. The church stuff, especially. I come from a really religious background and family and lots of different types of churches and denominations and all of it. So that was a part of this story that I could really relate to. And that I really wanted to tell. And I think it's interesting how the church tries to assert itself in these situations. And in one sense, they try to explain it away as it's all in God's divine plan. And then you have another version of it, which is like, yeah, fucked up shit happens and we're going to help you through it. Um, and, I don't know. I think it's gets really messy. And that is something that I was hoping would show in this character, is how there is no solution for
Yeah,
her.
it doesn't leave a clear path, and it seems like there's an agenda, kind of, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Alex, you're in a lot of the roles you've played. Like I'm thinking of things like The Northman, for example, a couple years, like kind of classic masculinity, like, and this is a very different and very kind of modern look at like where fatherhood and masculinity kind of come apart a little bit. And right now, that's such a fascinating thing to be talking about or making films about. Can you talk a little bit about that? And Michael and Judy, if you guys have anything to add on it too, but I'll let Alex start.
Well, Ron, the notion that he is responsible for what Eric did, the horrific act, um, in any way, shape, or form, is just like crushing. And I think Ron, before the movie starts, after the incident, was completely lost and probably, an inch away from just like imploding. So finding solace and finding the answers, easy answers in in his church group, is something that he so desperately needed in that moment. Uh, and I grew up in a very secular family and quite a secular society, but it still wasn't hard for me to understand and relate to Ron and relate to the notion of um, when you feel suffocated like that, how you're desperate for help, and this is a very oversimplified version of religion, and it's a quick fix when someone like Tracy Lett's character or Alison Pill's character basically say like, "Oh, you're not responsible for this. Not even your son who committed this horrific act is responsible. God has a plan. So it's all good. The victims will be good. Eric will be good. Everything is fine." And that is, those are the words that he just so desperately needed, because then it alleviates that kind of the pain, and it takes the guilt off of his own shoulders in a way.
And there's something really dangerous about that too, in just the world and all the ways that happens with these tragedies.
Well, yeah, of course, because he doesn't deal with the complexity of the situation, and he doesn't deal with the grief. He's escaping from it, basically saying like, "Oh, I'm not responsible, and I don't. There's no need to grieve because it's an easy fix." But again,
Yeah.
it's like it's a band-aid on an open wound, and at some point, it's going to come off.
There's something I just ask one last thing kind of around for each of you. Like parenting is there's a lot about parenting and the responsibility you referenced there, Alexander. That like the responsibility of parenting for the actions of a child is such a complicated idea. Like where does our agency end and theirs begin, and our, influence? Do you guys feel like that's kind of also in the mix and in the stew of what this story is about and how
Yeah,
parents take it?
yeah, definitely. But I also think it's an odd phenomenon how you can have a husband, a wife, and a child living in this house together, and they can all really somehow be strangers to one another. Like the assumption is if you're a member of a family that you have these, really deep connections and relationships with one another. But I find particularly in America that's not always the case. And a lot of people wind up in having families or in these households just because they kind of feel like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, or this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get married and have a kid, and but without much thought going into it, And it's like Ron reminds me a lot of a stepfather I had when I was young, who was a very, kind of quiet guy who didn't really have any strong opinions about anything. He just kind of, worked at his job and fulfilled his responsibilities, and then but he was always kind of a cipher. I couldn't really figure out, like, do you have any dreams, or like what's going on inside of you? And I feel like what Eric does is this catalyst to actually kind of, I don't know, snap them out of this subconscious kind of slumbering life that they've been living in. And I feel like for the society as a whole, we could stand to do that, I guess. I don't know.
It keeps happening too, right? This is
Yeah,
like, when he first wrote the play, it was
yeah,
around Columbine, right?
yeah.
We're
He
so
actually,
far.
spookily enough, he wrote it just before Columbine.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So it's been a part, like this particular story has been like this through line for decades, as this
yeah,
just keeps happening.
yeah.
I getting the signal to wrap. I was gonna ask another question, but I
I'm
thank you
sorry,
guys so much.
George.
I thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for making the movie, and it was great to talk to you.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Eric.
your questions. Thank you.
Bye.
I
Bye.